Welcome to Mental Mages. We are Shayna and Kathy, just two therapists geeking out about pop culture and mental health.
Our discussions do not substitute for mental health treatment. We might be therapists, but we aren't your therapists.
Come on, let's go on an adventure.
Welcome back to Mental Mages. Today, we are super excited to have a special guest to talk about Inside Out 2. I'm especially excited because our special guest is one of my student interns. She is, student interns. She's almost done. And she is a marriage and family therapy student right now, soon to be a full-fledged marriage and family therapist. So, Alyssa, can you?
Almost
Yes,
She's
we're
got a
there.
license, but whatever, close enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's just missing the L in front of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Alyssa, can you tell us more about you?
Well, yeah, like I said, I am a marriage and family therapy student intern, which has been super awesome, a great experience, and I feel like I've really found what I'm meant to do, which is awesome. I love working with kids, and I love, getting to incorporate all things nerdy in my sessions, all kinds of games and fun things. I'm really into board games. I'm really into musical theater. And I spend my free time, singing and dancing and playing board games. Really exciting stuff.
The best part about, like having my little student intern ducklings. Technically, Alyssa is directly under Olivia, who's been on the podcast before. But Olivia and I work very close together. But it's really fun watching the students go out and buy all the board games that we have practiced.
It's a financial struggle, really.
Especially considering you don't have a job.
I'm saying.
So my question was, when even before Inside Out 2 came out, this talking about Inside Out was something that we always knew we wanted to talk about because it is so ready to talk about mental health. And we will touch on Inside Out, the first one as well. So spoiler alert for both movies. And if you haven't seen them, you should. But even back then, Shayna said, "Oh, well, when we talk about Inside Out, we have to get Alyssa on." So, tell me more about your love of the movies.
Yes, as I've been saying to my clients, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, "It's coming out." And I'm like, "Girl, that's my whole brand. Like, prepare to be sick of me all June with this new Inside Out movie coming out." It's that movie I directly contribute to one of the reasons that I became a therapist, particularly with kids. Back when I was working in the foster care system as, kind of a direct care worker, I found that sometimes it was a little bit difficult to get them to tell me kind of about them or what they were feeling. And I think that we watched the movie one day, probably against their will because I liked it so much. And then I was asking them, it just came into my mind to ask them, like, hey, like, what is the little character that sits in the front of your control panel? And it really opened up a really beautiful discussion about, who they are and why they think the things that they do. And from that point on, I kind of wanted to figure out how I could build on that and, take that, process and feeling and turn it into something bigger. And that's kind of how I got into doing therapy. So it plays a big special part for me.
That's awesome. I know the Inside Out, the first one came out about, I think 9 years ago. And so it's not quite as ubiquitous with kids as it was when it first came out. And so it's been very exciting as a therapist to see like now some of those references that I could have made 8 or 9 years ago kids had kind of lost, but now they're getting it back again and
Mhm.
going back to watch that one. So very, very quick recap about what these movies are. So the first, Inside Out, follows our young protagonist Riley, and I think in the first movie she's what, like 10 or 11, 10.
Yeah, something like that. 9, 10.
And it follows her as her family is preparing to move from where she had been living to California. So she's moving halfway across the country, and just kind of all of the emotions that go with it. But half of the movie takes place, I suppose, in Riley's real life, and the other takes place in her head. And it is exploring how the emotions that are in her head to have operate her control panel, and basically all the decisions she makes in her life. And we will uh who wants to say what are the five emotions that we talked about in the first movie?
Well, we got joy and sadness and fear and anger and disgust.
Yes. And then the second movie picks up 3 years later when young Riley is entering puberty. Um, and we get thrown in with a bunch of new emotions that essentially create havoc in her brain, as puberty is wont to do to everyone. And this is kind of where we are now. And what are the additional feelings that we're introduced to in Inside Out 2?
Anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui, which we probably should describe because I actually had to Google it myself because I had never heard of it. So essentially, it's a French word, and it means to be disinterested or bored.
Yes, very teenagery.
Yes.
Um, one of the things that is very so talking with Kayla, who's been on both of our Taylor Swift episodes. She is the mother of a toddler, and she was like, toddlers also feel some of these feelings, not ennui, I wouldn't say, but like anxiety and envy and things like that. So, but I think when we're looking at why there's more complexity here, it's really looking at how brains develop. And it's worth reminding people, because this is something that is a huge part of when we work with children, is reminding parents that kids aren't just mini adults. They're not just like a adult brain in a mini body. Their brains aren't fully formed. And so children go through kind of expected developmental stages. And a lot of that is in terms of how they're thinking, and how emotions come out, and how much they are in control or not in control of what happens there. And their brains don't function like that. And so even though so emotional states are going to be much more simplified. And so with so feelings and thoughts are kind of distinct but intertwined. And with children that are younger, like pre-adolescents, they have what we call like more concrete thinking, which is um very binary, very black and white thinking. And then it becomes more abstract the older they get, and through puberty. So yeah, there's my little digression on that.
I know a lot of times when I'm working with parents, and Alyssa might have seen this too, especially with younger kids, parents can get very caught up in this, like, oh, well, they're planning to do this or they're intentionally manipulating and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they're 8. They're
Yes.
not in the corner going, what can I, do? Um, so, yeah, yeah, that's always pretty funny to me. Um,
So it's very interesting to me to of course, like whenever you watch any movies, you're going to pick the pieces that really resonate with you. The first time we watched the movie, my kiddo was very young, and we went with her cousin. um I think they were like all like 3, 4, 5. And her cousins were like literally 2 days later moving across the country. and one of her cousins' name is literally Riley. And so I remember just like going to eat afterwards, and it was kind of a somber affair. Like they were crying. I mean, they were little because they had grown up like more like sisters. And so it really was so spot on that it was kind of like, huh, what did we do there? And then this time I went, I'm the mother of an adolescent. And we went to the movies. There was, I think, like 10 of us that went together. And so it was a bunch of my daughter and her friends, and then the parents. We all went, and then while we were there, they ran into some more of their friends. So it was very, very cool for them to watch it together.
I'm also the mother of an adolescent.
Whew.
I know, it's disgusting. And without any of the before, but my favorite parts were like how intense the emotions were. Like when they
Yes.
barely touched the thing and this giant explosion happened and I was dying. I was like, "Oh my god. That's my 12-year-old."
Hmm. It's that scene where Riley's mom is waking her up, like when puberty takes over, and just like the absolute swings of emotions. It was like, this is our life right now.
Yeah.
And as confusing as it is to parents, it is that plus confusing to the kid dealing with it.
So, fun fact, the first Inside Out came out when Um, I don't know if it was like when we were still seniors in high school, but Ryan and I went together. Um, and I remember because I hadn't seen a single preview of it, like literally nothing. I was just like, oh, yeah, I was like, we like Pixar movies generally. Let's just go see this movie that's out. And both of us were like obsessed with it. From the lava mini thing at the beginning, that already hooked me, to the entire movie. We were just like, "Oh my god, this is so good." Um,
And you know I went
so
out and
I
bought a
remember that.
ukulele and learned to play after watching that lava short. I sure did.
I believe you. I too can play it. Bonus video. Alyssa and I will play lava.
The dream.
I can't, but I am here for y'all's video.
I'll have to relearn it. It's been a minute.
Well, and I was the therapist at the time the movie came out, and in my office has all Wonder Woman stuff and all five of the emotions stuffies from the first movie, and I'm like, crap, now I have to get some more. And
This has
then
really been a
because
financial issue.
it is a financial issue, and then on top of that, it also hits on my personal anxiety disorder, which I'm like, they're going to be a different size than the original five emotions that I have. And so does that mean I'm going to have to buy the original five all over again? Because I have a disorder. So I'm going to make it work though. I'm going to use it as, yeah, like ERP or something. So I don't know. I'm going to get them.
It's worth it. Do it.
And if I need to get all five of the original ones again, then that's fine.
I think you
too,
do. I think you need
suppose.
to. Why not?
Don't encourage.
That's what I'm here for.
You could donate some to me then.
We'll see. The other, though, I also have, although I don't know where they are, and if I don't have all of them, they're not going up, is the pops from the first five. And those are, you can guarantee will be the same size. So it's the good thing about pops is that they're uniform for collectors with anxiety disorders.
It's so interesting how OCD manifests differently because that would not bother me. I'm just like, what are you talking about?
What do you mean different? They're the same. It's emotions. Fine.
They're not the same collection, though. You need to have
It's
the
not the same
collection.
collection. Yes.
You can see how my manifest is
val-
right there.
Exactly. You
I
got me.
value.
Well, and then Matt this is very, very bad for our wallets because Matt has a similar type. I don't think he has OCD necessarily, but he is a collector, and so he has similar feelings about it. And so he collects Star Wars, and so to me, Star Wars as a collection is a collection. But he's like, no, because if you like, for example, Lego came out with really cool Lego sets that have like helmets. It's like a helmet series, and his favorite character is of course Boba Fett. So I got him Boba Fett helmet. And he was like, but now I have to get the rest of the helmets. I'm like, no, you actually don't. You do not have to get them all. He's like, I do. You don't. So this movie, Riley is going through puberty, but it's also the time where she is going from middle school into high school. And she has some pretty devastating news at the beginning of the movie where her two besties will be going to a different high school than she is going to. And they tell her this right as they're getting ready to walk into hockey camp, which is a big thing because they're all big hockey players. And so really the whole crux, well, there's a lot of little cruxes of the movie, but it's going to exploring grief and loss of relationships or relationships changing, and also fitting in and dealing with these things. So it's a lot of what she's coping with at the same time. So
It's incredible how, and it's not, I mean, they're kids, so of course this is the way it is, but it's incredible how the whole movie probably could have been avoided if they actually just talked about.
well, I mean, that's most conflicts.
Yeah. Yep.
That is, yeah. Two things that would address most conflicts in the world is like communication and mind your own business. Solved the world problems right there.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so what's really interesting in the movie, because there's the beginning part, and she's of course brushing it off like, no, it's no big deal, whatever, it's fine. Um, kind of just shoving the emotions down. Um, and then there's probably pieces that are in between that. But, maybe I'm jumping forward, but that's okay. One of the things that I actually really liked, and something that I've had conversations with clients, because they very much see anxiety as like a villain. And I've actually asked them what are the ways that it actually was helpful to her. Because I actually, anxiety was trying to protect her in that big group of people. Like, no, you can't actually act like a fool, and goof off. You need to be professional and present in this moment. And because anxiety wasn't in control actually at that moment, Riley got herself in trouble and everyone else. And then it was embarrassing and awkward and blah, blah, blah. And, anxiety does help us with that. Like, adhering to social norms and following rules and being prepared for things. Um, those,
Self-preservation.
yes, yes. Hmm.
um the thing that is so fantastic about these movies is that they really do explore the value and how each emotion that we feel is helpful or can be helpful, is purposeful, and it does do something to even if it's uncomfortable. So the first movie, a lot of that was exploring sadness, and of course anger. But even the first montage in the second movie, when she is playing hockey and it goes through all of her emotions and shows how even in that one hockey game, how each of those emotions um, play a really constructive part in her being successful in what she does. And then again, like kind of coming through that with all of her emotions at the end with anxiety. It's something that we've long said as a supervisor with work, is that there's this sweet spot of um, and not coming from a therapeutic standpoint, but coming from an employee standpoint of doing the things to be compliant with what we have to do to stay in business. Is there's a sweet spot of anxiety that people have that make them very successful. So they have to have enough, exactly. They have to have enough anxiety to kind of like keep them going, keep them motivated, get their paperwork done on time, follow the rules, like, but not so much anxiety that it's paralyzing,
Mm-hmm.
And that
or
line
that
is
it burns people
paper
out.
thin.
It
It
is
is
paper
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 thin.
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 It is. Mm-hmm.
And I like to jump rope over that line.
Oh
Oh,
my gosh,
absolutely.
Alyssa's like a jump rope master with that line.
Oh, absolutely.
She could
And
beat some
it's
competitions.
and of course watching anxiety manifest itself in this movie was and watching anxiety toe that line between being so helpful and
Yes.
because at the beginning I was kind of like, well, she does have a point, like I'm just saying, like it's gonna be so real. And then watching it just not be taken care of in such a way and manifest in such a big and profound way, I was weeping. I was like, it was such a simple yet profound example and depiction of exactly what happens in my brain and in the brain of other people with anxiety when you're kind of jump roping that paper thin line of, okay, well, it was really helpful and it kept me safe then, but now I'm freaking out about X, Y, or Z, and we just crossed over that line. And if it's not tended to, it can get out of control. I was snot crying in this movie theater full of children, trying to be as quiet as possible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what
You
I
know,
also
go ahead.
was talking over me.
I
I'm
know.
teasing. What I love is like really the whole movie is about, and the original one as well, but what happens when a feeling is unchecked by other feelings, and it just totally takes over. Because really, any feeling completely taking over is unhealthy. We can't be happy and joyful in literally every single situation. So if that is totally unchecked, that's not helpful either. Um,
Well, and I was gonna say, like, to me, like, a perfect example of the difference between just, like, a non-clinically like, an anxiety disorder, so having anxiety, which is not clinically significant, and having an anxiety disorder is, so the example of the scene where they go into the room where all of the scenes of all of the possible outcomes are being played, and anxiety is just ramping it up. Okay, more. I need more examples of all of the bad things that could happen. And that is, every person has moments where their anxiety takes over like that, just like Riley. Um, and if you don't have an anxiety disorder, then the other feelings or your cognitive abilities can keep that in check, and you can do some self-talk, you can do some grounding and pull yourself out of that. But when you have an anxiety disorder, it can be like that all the time. And when my OCD is untreated and out of control, that is what my life is like 24 hours a day, because even when you're sleeping. Um,
it manifests in your dreams, absolutely.
I
Hmm.
remember as a child, my mother had to effectively ban, in quotes, the words what if, because I was so just profoundly anxious about anything and every possible situation that could happen, just like in Riley's mind where they're just feeding her all of these potential situations. I was so caught up in the what if this happens, what if that happens, that she was like, well, girl, what if it doesn't? Like, take a breath. And so you watching the physical depiction of that phrasing was very interesting.
I also loved her sense of self addition, like the self talk, her cognitive, because that's all, it's literally a physical manifestation of us talking about neural pathways in our
yes.
yeah, self talk.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God. And the different strings and the different how we talk to ourselves and how we view ourselves. And watching that slowly die throughout the movie was oh my god. Um,
Well, I love, one of the things that I loved is that, so in the first movie they really explored having core memories and how important that is, but then they really explored like having oh gosh, what is it? How did they refer with the little thing that developed
Oh,
your
the
Belief
oh my
system.
gosh.
belief system?
No.
Thank you. Yeah, and so beliefs about yourself, and then, you know, how it comes at the beginning. It's very, very simple. Like, I'm a good person. And then, which is a very childish way of thinking. It goes to that concrete way of thinking again. It's black, I'm a good person or I'm not a good person. There's no in between. But then of course we see in the end just it develops into this really super complicated and messy and beautiful sense of self, because that's how we are. We're complicated and messy and beautiful. And the other thing that I loved is, like, especially at the end, all of the emotions, they would refer to, like, Riley as our girl. We love our girl. We love our Riley, and like taking care of her. And that's really our brain's job, is to take care of us and our well-being, not just our physical well-being, but our mental well-being too. That's its job. Our brain loves us. Sometimes it loves us so much that it makes us anxious. And we have to have those other parts take over.
I loved that this movie also allowed like the five initial emotions to work together.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. You see kind of like I don't want to say like a softening, but like a comfort level that they have with each other. They're like, we know what to do here. We know how we work play to each other's strengths. I have an article from BuzzFeed that I will also link, but it talked with um excuse me, talked with the creator of the film. And so the director, Kelsey Mann, talked about how he came up with the idea for the sequel when he was looking at old childhood pictures of himself from like his birthday parties. And he noticed that he had, quote, the biggest smile on his face during his 5th birthday. However, on his 13th birthday, his smile had diminished. And he said, I was just sitting there staring at the cake. I looked miserable, and it was such a contrast from when I was 5. And I was like, what happened? And so, really, it's that kind of exploration of what happens um, as we get older and things are more complex, and that ennui sets in and the anxiety sets in. And it reminds me of something that Shayna, you often talk about, especially with adults. You're like, what do I talk about? And that is how important it is for us at all ages to have fun.
That is my whole if Inside Out is Alyssa's personality and persona, me wanting adults to have fun is mine. I'm so passionate about it, and I think that's why I struggle a little bit, honestly, with working with adults, and honestly, why I think adults don't always click with me
Interesting. That's probably spot on.
because they walk into my room, and I know for a fact that if an adult walks into my room and says, "Do you work with children?" we are not going to ultimately be a good fit. Um, And that has historically been the the thing. You know, my room is very fun. Very, very, very fun. I do not believe it is childish looking though. I don't. I don't think so. I have
Not in a
games.
way that's like preschool or anything like that, but it is for sure there's whimsy all
Yes,
over.
there is a lot of
You
whimsy.
have the first thing you see when you walk in is that giant teddy bear.
I love that giant teddy bear.
As it should be. I think every
Yes.
room you walk into should have a giant teddy bear just waiting for you.
And I remember too like having a conversation with another therapist. And they didn't mean to, and it wasn't even offensive, but they told me that, what did they say? Something like, you really like to do childish things, something along those lines. And I was like, no, I like to do fun things. Like, it's not childish. Why do we have to have an age on things? Um, anyway, that's a spiel. But I do think that
No, I mean,
adults,
that's a spiel that I think is worth pulling on that thread and really looking at the element of joy and how we go from being kids that experience, and we're talking about like a normative development, not kids that are going through trauma and stuff that unfortunately might have some other feelings at the helm, but joyfulness being a huge part of like personality development there, and that we really get so bogged down in all of the responsibilities and the anxiety and the fear and the sadness and responsibility and all of that other stuff, that joy takes up less and less and less of our brain power and our time. And so we have to be really intentional is the word, about creating those moments of joy and what is joyful for us.
And there are so
And
many ways
that's not
to have.
childish.
No,
Yeah.
it's not childish. It's
It's
not.
part of self-care.
It's fun.
I was told by a professor in grad school, not in these exact words, essentially that no one would take me seriously if I continued to be such a cheerleader as a therapist. And, that gave me a lot of imposter syndrome for a very long time because my personality naturally, I work with children, like my personality just naturally is bigger and, more playful. I do musical theater. Like I very much have very stereotypical theater kid personality. And it took a lot to shift that and being like, no, I can be an adult, a functioning, productive member of society, and a really great therapist and still call people out when I need to, but still be positive and fun and encouraging. And, some people it clicks with and some people it doesn't. But it's really nice to, have adults come and sit in my room and be able to be exactly who I am and be, if you want to call it a cheerleader for, anything, so be it. But that element of encouragement and joy, I feel like is so important and can be discounted so much in this field. And I wish that it wasn't.
I know. Me too. Me too. And there's people that really like love games, and there's still so many like therapists that have seen or talked to and say that games don't belong in therapy. Um, at least beyond a certain age. And I play games with my adults.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, it is disheartening from a perspective of um teachers kind of teaching that there's a one size fits all in terms of therapy, and that's certainly not my perspective and not what my experience has been. At this point I've been excuse me, running a outpatient mental health center for 15 years. Excuse me. And we've got 40 therapists currently, so I've supervised over 100. And I think our strength is that we have so many different perspectives, so many different personalities. And one of the things I'm always talking about with therapy is that you have to do what is authentic to you, because if you're not authentic with your clients, they feel something is wrong. They know that you're not being authentic, and then it feels deceptive, and a lot of times clients can't even put their finger on what is wrong about that relationship. And also having the understanding that you're not going to click with every client. And that's something for non-therapists to take away from this too, is you're not going to click with every therapist. And just because you had a less than satisfactory therapeutic relationship with someone at some point doesn't mean that there's not the perfect therapist for you that's out there. It just means having to try and weed through it and find it. Um, it is one of the things that I love that has happened just over time. The more I talk in my personal life about mental health, that I have people all the time reaching out to me for help trying to find a therapist, because it is really hard if you don't know what you're looking for. Um, and I love being able to help kind of link people up to that. And so, some of that is, oh, you need a therapist who's a little whimsical here. You need a Shayna, or you need someone who's a little more um like traditional in their approach, more straightforward in terms of what you expect with talk therapy. Um, and there's no right or wrong. The only right or wrong is if it's helping the person who's coming for help. So there's
I
my
like the word whimsical. It's gonna go in my bio. If you're
better
looking
than
for
childish.
Yes, if you're looking for a whimsical and fun therapeutic experience, here's Shayna and Alyssa.
Mhm.
Well, and it's, it's even talking about, with therapists that may have different presentations. So for example, Shayna, often your hair is different colors. And for some people that may be off-putting. And so just knowing that, they may make snap judgments about who you are and what you can do for them right away. And that's okay. They
Yep,
can. They
sure
can find
is.
someone that they're comfortable with.
Yep, yep, absolutely, for sure. What do you think are the moments in the movie, kind of linking back, um, that stood out to you guys the most? And I'll kind of share mine too. But what do you think
So the one that
besides Pouchy, Kathy?
oh,
Pouchy and I have beef. Pouchy and I have beef, and I stand
well,
by that.
that's fine. I'm in my fanny pack era right now, so
Oh, I love a fanny pack. Don't think I'm over here slandering a fanny pack. I'm the first one going out with my friends to, link up with a fanny pack. Don't think I'm slandering a fanny pack.
um yeah, so and I like to also view my fanny pack as a little bit like my bag of holding, in that it does have it, like literally in the game but also in real life, it has a lot of things in it that are unexpected, so it usually will have a solution to a problem. But that is not pouchy is not what really resonated with me. um so the part that probably the gut punch, which is of course then the most impactful for me, is when she's going through her different islands, and her family island is very, very, very small,
Oh,
and muted in terms and that is completely 100% um appropriate. That's developmentally
developmentally
appropriate.
normal.
That is
Yeah.
what happens and that is what should be happening in adolescence, is that a person needs um to be to start to pull away from their parents and create their own identities and their own thoughts, and a lot of that is exploring that through relationships with peers. um but it's also at the core of what she was, and so it was a little bittersweet, because I also knew that while we went to the movies with 10 people, I was still sitting by myself because she was at the other end of the row with her friends. So we were there together, but we weren't.
People on the internet have actually been bringing that up a lot on TikTok and things like that, where it's, you know, probably girls, mostly girls in their early 20s, have been saying, like, I was so mad when I saw the size of Family Island. And then I realized that I saw the first Inside Out with my parents and the second one with my friends.
That's
And I
exactly
think
what my
that
daughter
that
said to
really
me.
gut punched a lot of people once that realization finally set in, too.
What about you, Alyssa?
Well, I mean, I cried through 45 minutes of that movie straight. There was a moment where it started and then proceeded not to stop for the rest of the movie, because it was like every feeling that I have ever had that I didn't know how to put my finger on was just being displayed in front of me. For me, the anxiety attack scene was extremely profound. I don't panic quietly. I have never been one where my anxiety and anxiety attacks present quietly. It always feels like just a vomit of emotions and what ifs and, you know, something that I just can't get a hold of. And watching that happen in real time and, not even just watching the anxiety attack happen itself, it was putting the pieces together that, you know, by letting the little what ifs in instead of doing the work to stop them in their tracks, no matter how small that they seemed and no matter how helpful they seemed at the time, it built and built and built and got to this point where it just kind of exploded. And even my mom, who is the least anxious person I've ever met, which has always been a really interesting dynamic in our household, she was like, this movie made so much sense to me because I have you and I have watched you, grow up having these panic attacks. And, this really highlighted, what's happening up here. And I think that if this movie does one thing and teaches the adults in these children's lives what is happening when they might be saying mean things and they might be panicking, and it's not them acting out, it's just that depiction of what's going on in their head. If these parents can see that and understand that, that will be life-changing for so many children who have these anxiety disorders. And that was my big takeaway.
I think two things. One is this should be prescribed homework for a lot of children and their parents or
Yes.
caregivers. But the other thing is I do have some quotes about the anxiety attack from that BuzzFeed article. So this is from Adam Habib, who was the co-cinematographer. He said, "We started doing a lot of things like tightening up the shutter angle, so suddenly everything's a lot sharper and the focus got a lot deeper as Riley's putting more and more pressure on herself. Then when the anxiety attack hits, suddenly we flip everything. The focus goes extremely shallow and the world drops away." And then Maya Hawke, who was the voice of anxiety, she said that her personal experience with anxiety attacks informed how she voiced anxiety, specifically during that scene. She said, "I saw it as the air not going down into her breath. It was like a tornado. You can't breathe when you're stuck in the middle of a tornado."
And anxiety had to choose to let go. And that also sat very profoundly with me, that it wasn't like Joy couldn't come in and make it better. She couldn't push anxiety off of the control panels. A lot of times people are like, oh, well, like, let's do something fun. Let's distract in that way. And it's not possible. You have to just ride the storm and try to keep telling, like, let her go, let her go. And then it just has to, in its own time, let you go. And that was, really impactful.
When we left the theater, Matt and Sarah both said, "Oh, they did what you always talk about to me." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about." And essentially they were talking about her using her senses as grounding. And I was like, "I do talk about that all the time, don't I?" And they're like, "Yeah, you don't even know that you talk about it all the time, but other people
I
are
love a
hearing
5,
that
4, 3,
from
2,
me."
1 grounding
Exactly.
exercise. My clients are sick of it. They are sick of my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's
It
also my go-to.
works.
It does work, and they
And
don't
that's what I
believe
always
me.
say. I was
And
like, it
if
sounds
you
silly, but it
it
works.
sounds
I remember
silly.
looking at my therapist and she was like, do this. And I said,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what do you mean? Of course I can use my 5 senses. I'm an adult. And then, turns out when you're mid panic, it works.
It works. And if you need
Wild.
more information about it, last year we did the series, it's 5 different episodes on the 5 senses, so you can go back and listen to that. Shayna, what about you?
I really think that the progression of the self-talk is what
Mm.
really, really, really stuck with me. And even just starting at the very, very beginning when Joy was still repressing feelings, like flushing them. She's like, oh, we don't need this. Um,
Yeet that over there.
yes. And Ryan's like, did she not learn anything from the first movie? And
She
I was like,
learned
she did.
sadness was very important.
Yeah, she did, but she just, was still like, this isn't helpful. And to a point, some of the things that she yeeted weren't helpful. However, just yeeting them, it doesn't actually solve them. Just being like, I don't like that particular thing, so I'm just not going to think about it. Um, that's not helpful, and we saw that. And I think that when they had to, all of it then became part of her. I just all of like literally that slow progression. I just loved the whole thing. Um, I did. I loved the whole thing. And then I also just like how, because of course, I wanted to fit in, but I was always just a weird adolescent that I
Mm,
actually loved to be profoundly different. It was my
whimsical.
rebellion. Whimsical, yes. I was whimsical at all ages. Um, and I made it, I was one of those weirdos that like found satisfaction in being weird. Um, yeah. So, but just like how I do think back to just how mean. Like, so what if this 13-year-old likes this pop singer? Why does that matter to you? And I do remember that and like being, because I was 13 and I skipped a grade, so I was in high school. So, but I was homeschooled, but I was in high school and like youth group and stuff. And I was like 13 with all these high schoolers, and I definitely was never accepted ever. And so in that way, I did very much relate to that. Um,
It's quite interesting because obviously, like, the three of us have spent a lot of time talking about anxiety because I think that that is the emotion currently and maybe always all three of us have identified most with or struggled most with to kind of keep anxiety in check. One of the things that was really interesting, and I did a very brief like interview with uh the people that I went to the movies with and listen to the after credit scene and you can hear the direct clips for yourself. But I interviewed my daughter and her friends about what they thought with the movie. And almost all of them loved embarrassment. And I think that when you're looking, especially at that age, that that is what they are struggling a lot with, feeling embarrassment.
Okay. My name is Mary, and I saw Inside Out too, and it's really good because I feel like it really encaptures teenagers' life.
What
You should
about
go
it?
see it. Anxiety. Anxiety is a real one, but yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
So my name's Timmy. I just saw Inside Out too. I think it really showed anxiety attacks, like a space of like lifelessness, and I also really like ennui, just being super bored the whole time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm Alene. I watched Inside Out too. I thought it was great. I thought it was very sweet. And all the moments where like they just all tied together and it was really adorable. I liked it.
Did you have an emotion you were specifically?
I liked embarrassment. He was really cute. That was my favorite.
Embarrassment is king.
My name is Abby. I just watched Inside Out 2, and it was very cute. It was very relatable. Inside Out, not Inside Out, embarrassment and anxiety were,
You're right there.
yes, they
Yeah.
were. They were very.
I'm Sarah. I really liked Inside Out too. I think it was also really relatable, and I liked embarrassment
You liked embarrassment.
because I get embarrassed a lot.
Oh, Sarah. I'm Brianna, and I just watched Inside Out too. And I thought it was really good, and I really relate to it. And my favorite emotion was probably embarrassment, because he's so adorable.
These are very. As the parents of an adolescent girl, what are your thoughts on the movie?
Extremely accurate. Watching anxiety was like watching my child's brain.
Sherry?
I'm gonna go with all of it collectively together at the end because you get to see all the different pieces that make you who you are.
So when because I was in at the very end of the credits, and one of the very last lines of the credits in the whole thing was, "This movie is for our kids. We love you just the way you are."
Oh,
And that was when I wanted to cry.
Embarrassment sits heavy in my head even to this day. And I think that one thing that I wish the movie touched on a little bit more was the tie between anxiety and
And
embarrassment.
embarrassment.
The
Yeah.
amount of time I get embarrassed over something that literally like didn't even happen or is not really like anything anyone would notice. I like have made myself
Conversation from
anxious,
10 years ago that like you're replaying in your head kind of
like
thing.
awaken from your slumber and you're like, they hate me. I'm like, they don't remember you. The cashier at the Publix when you were 7 doesn't remember who you are. Calm down. But I find that, those anxious thoughts bring out embarrassment so much. And of course, there's only so much you can cover in an hour and 40-minute movie. But for me, that was like, I would have loved to see a little more like, just to see what they would come up with dialogue and dynamic between embarrassment and anxiety.
I think one of the most beautiful things about getting older for me is that embarrassment has gotten much, much smaller.
I can't wait. I cannot
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah, like it's nice. So I know that we're gonna wrap up in a few, but I have two like kind of interesting things that I want to throw out. So one is in in the Time article where they were interviewing Dr. Dacher Keltner, who was the consultant on both movies. They asked him a question of, if Inside Out 3 is in our future, what emotions would we want to see next? So I thought this was interesting. So his response was, if Riley is 15 or 16, oh man, that's serious. She'd be moving out of her peer group and into society, hopefully to do something good. So I'd bring in the moral emotions, indignation, of course, but also awe, desire, and compassion. Um, I've taught young women for 33 years and can tell you they are so, so hard on themselves. They're hard on their emotional lives. Like, I shouldn't feel this, or I'm bad for feeling that way. And that's just not true. As long as you're not hurting people, I tend to think all emotions are good. That's the whole point of this film. And then the other thing, and I will for sure link this article. This is uh it's Dr. Keltner and Alan Cohen published it in 2017. And it is from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences Journal. And it is self-report captures 27 distinct categories of emotion bridged by continuous gradients. And it is very scientifically worded. Getting through this article last night was interesting and also made me feel not as smart as I often feel like I am. So, but a few things came from that. So like, what they found is like these 27 different kind of emotions that a lot of people feel, or most people feel in some level. They're not distinct. There's a lot of overlap in them. And so they created this cool kind of like map of this. So they did this, but they showed like thousands of little video clips, and then had different ways that people would label what feeling they made them have, that little video clip. And there is a link to this interactive map that you can literally like click on like the different emotions and it'll play the video clip that they used in the thing. And some of them are like amazing and some of them, like for disgust, like some of them are blurred out because you should not be watching them, and some of them are just disgusting. So it does have, when you go to this website, it does have a warning that pops up like but it's safe to go look at the ones near Adoration. There's a lot of animal and kid videos in that section. But I just wanted to read the 27 states there. So we have admiration, adoration, aesthetic appreciation, amusement, anger, anxiety, awe, awkwardness, boredom, calmness, confusion, craving, disgust, empathetic pain, entrancement, excitement, fear, horror, interest, joy, nostalgia, relief, romance, sadness, satisfaction, sexual desire, and surprise. So I will for sure link to those things as well. the last note that I kind of wanted to say, because I was prepared to go in and weep through the whole thing, and I did not until the very last line of the credits. And it said, this movie is like dedicated to our kids. We love you just the way you are.
Oh.
I couldn't see it through the haze of my tears and
Yeah.
snot at that
Fair.
point. So getting to, hear about that after was beautiful. But I was already.
I didn't
Yes.
cry because I don't have a soul, but that's a different conversation.
That's also
We love you
fair.
anyway.
We love you just the way you are.
Exactly.
And I will say, like, there was and she did, bless her, she did come over and like say her name and try to tell me what she thought about the movie, but she was in tears. So one of the kiddos that I did interview told me her name, and she said the movie's really good, but she cried also through the last probably 15 full minutes of the movie. All right, on that note, let's go on our side quest.
Alyssa's
So
like,
this is
I don't know what that means.
our side quest is where we talk about what we've been consuming, what pop culture things we have been consuming lately. So Shayna, why don't you go first?
Well, of course, I'm watching House of the Dragon.
Same.
Yep, I love me some House of the Dragon. So that is primarily, and then I'm reading a fantasy book that's pretty popular right now in the romantasy world. Well, there hasn't been any romance yet, which is not a bad thing on my end, but um, it's called the something. Hold on, The Serpent and the House of Night. No, The Wings of Night. House of Night, something like that. Um, yeah, yeah. So there you go. That's what I've been doing.
What about you, Alyssa?
I just picked up yesterday the book Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So I'm excited to read that. The main character has OCD, so I am, and the author also has OCD, so I'm very, excited to read kind of what he has to say and hopefully find another character that I can really relate to. And then I have also just started The Bear because the new
Oh
season comes out.
gosh. Speaking of anxiety,
The girl that voices Envy in Inside Out
is
is
Sydney.
in The Bear. So I have been really enjoying that as well. I'm playing a lot of Ticket to Ride. That has taken over my whole being and soul. I cannot stop. I love that silly little train game.
I also love that game. Fun fact, so we have been playing, actually, we have friends coming over here in like 45 minutes, and we have been playing Pandemic Legacy with them for literally years because they live out of state. It's Isabella who was on our animal episode. She lives out of state right now for veterinary school. So we only see them Christmas time / the summer when she has a break. They're very good friends of ours. Her husband Dylan was at our wedding, and so but we started playing Pandemic Legacy with them back in like 2021. And so
Wow.
I know, and so it's ridiculous, and there's
In
like
the middle of a
potentially,
pandemic.
yes, ironically. And so the way it works is a legacy game, so it builds on itself. So if you lose um if you lose twice through, because you go through like the 12 months of the year. So in theory, if you win every single game, it would be 12 games. Um, we have been really epically failing recently. So um, like after like if you lose twice in a row, they just promote you. And they're like, here's a little pity present to get you a little further. So we're hopefully, maybe, possibly gonna wrap up the legacy game today. If not, we will wrap it
Next
up in
time.
2025.
Okay.
What about you,
I have
Kathy?
I've been reading Stephen King's new book, You Like It Darker, which is a short story compilation. It's got 12 stories. One of them I did not know is a sequel to Cujo, which is a 40-year-old book, and I read it years and years ago. And it's very interesting because I I sometimes feel like, even though he's a horror writer, that a lot of his books end in very optimistic ways. Cujo is not one of those. Cujo is extremely bleak, perhaps because it was also written in like the throes of his addiction, that he's even talked about really not remembering writing it. Um, and he's been sober for many years now, but so in it is one of the short stories, which is a little bit longer, is a sequel to it that takes place 40 years after the events of Cujo. So that was good, but it really explores grief and loss. And then I have been watching House of the Dragon and avoiding watching The Bear because I love it. It's a wonderful, but it does make me very, very anxious.
I'm only like 4 episodes in, so I haven't really gotten to any of the nitty gritty. So I know I'm like,
well, it's just like, it's just like restaurant work would not be for me.
I did it.
It is just not. Yeah,
I did restaurant service work, and I can tell you it was not for me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but I love it. It's a great show.
I'll add it to the list that I'll probably never get to.
It's really good. It's really
I
good.
know.
Like, I was the same way. I'm like, it doesn't seem like it like would be interesting to me at all. And
I don't even know anything. I don't know anything about it. It's more so I just don't have. We just don't watch a ton of TV.
Time.
Yeah. We're watching. We have to catch up on Critical Role because in July we're gonna go meet the cast at a con.
Woo.
And by we, I mean mostly Ryan watching it and updating me. So, like,
yeah, that's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Mental Mages.
Woo.
Editing is by Ryan Merrill. Artwork by Matthew Gwaltney. Intro music is Call to Adventure by Kevin MacLeod. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license.
For more information on our podcast, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Mental Mages Podcast. Well, it's time for us to go take a long rest. Until next time, adventurers.
Just hit start recording.
I did. It's been recording for 11 seconds.
Yes, you're right. This feels very discombobulating to me because I'm used to being the one with the power of the button.
Yeah. And I have the power of the intro because Kathy can't do it without laughing.
That is true. 2 years in, still can't do it.
Because I have such a good intro too. You're about to hear it. It's incredible.